Hello everyone. I am Sophia Melonē, the Debt Demolisher, here to bring you the tools, tips, and tricks to help you manage your financial baggage the right way. It is an honor and absolute privilege to be before you all for yet another live stream night right here, none other than on the Debt Demolisher TV. Tonight we're going to be talking about credit and so much more. There have been so many questions that I've been seeing and that I've been receiving from folks around what to do, how to manage fluctuations inside of their credit report, what to do when loans are paid off, or what to do to help achieve better balance inside of their credit reports. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk to you all tonight about is just that. So how can we take ourselves into a space where we can improve our credit scores, not only just for the sake of improving them, but also for the sake of understanding how to leverage them? To give you a little bit of a background story on me, my context, how I'm authorized to speak in this space, and even just from my own personal experiences, I've been a person who was, of course, inundated with a lot of debt. I've shared on several live streams prior to where I was in over $365,000 of debt before the age of 30. Didn't really understand how I got there, didn't really understand why I got there, but most importantly, I didn't understand how to make better improvements inside of my credit score. So I would get my credit card statements and sometimes my credit card statements or the credit monitoring profiles or services that I had, it would give me my score. And I would never understand like why my score couldn't get above 700, or if it did get above 700, why couldn't it get above 710? So I remember the days where my credit score would be anywhere between like not even 619, but maybe like 690 something or 696, and it would barely jump over to the 704 mark, and then it would drop back down in the next month. And I just couldn't understand like what was happening, even though I was making my payments on my credit cards on time, even though I was paying all of my loans on time. Despite all of that, it didn't change the fact that my score wasn't going above and beyond 700. And when I started to go into my debt elimination journey, I was still in that mindset, in that mind frame of I just got to pay everything off because I'm tired of being in all of this debt. I just have to pay everything off. And with me going through the notion of just paying things off, working one credit card at a time, I started to notice that my credit score was going up. And so me noticing that my credit score was going up, I was thinking that, oh, because I'm paying this stuff off, that's what's causing my credit score to go up. So I got to the point where I got all of my credit card balances down to where I was paying them off every single month. My timing was perfect in terms of when I would have like balances show up on my credit report. Balances show up on my credit report. And then I started to get to like the loans, paid off the personal loan, paid off the car. And then I got to the point where I paid off my student loans. And so when I got to the point where I paid off my student loans, I'm thinking that my credit score was going to go up because I was like, okay, I'm up to 793 now. So by the time I paid down all of my credit cards, I paid off my personal loan, my car loan, and then I was tackling I was tackling the student loan debt. It was going down. My credit score hit 793. So I was like, oh, once I pay this student loan off, I'm going to be good. My credit score is going to shoot through the roof. It's going to be 800 and something, and I'm going to be in an 800 credit score club. So I get to the point now, you guys, where I pay off all of my student loans. And do you guys know that my credit score dropped? And when it dropped, I was like, what is going on? I was like, how is my credit score going down? Like, I just don't understand. I just didn't get it. And it was so mind-boggling to me because I said to myself, how is my score going down if I'm paying off all of this stuff? But what I did not do was take the time to really understand the algorithm of how your credit score is derived. And so because I went through the state and I paid off all of the stuff, I got down to my student loans, paid off all of that, and then all I had was my mortgage. That was really my only installment loan that was left, was the mortgage. I was like, how is my credit score dropping? My stomach felt sick. And then I really went into study mode. And so I said, if I just paid all of this stuff off and my credit score dropped, I need to find out why it's dropping. And so I went behind the scenes, put on my critical thinking brain, and I started to research how your credit scores are derived. And when I began to do this research, I began to just go back and I began to look at all of the different components, all of the different elements. That is when I was able to figure out what the code was. And what do I mean by what the code is? Your credit score is comprised of 5 areas. If you are watching this, I want you to make sure that you grab a piece of paper. I want you to make sure that you grab a notepad. And I want you to write this down. And if you don't want to write this down, then by all means, you can find your way right over to SophiaMelonē.com and you can purchase my ebook where I talk about the 5 perfect rules to perfect credit, or the 5 rules to perfect credit. It'll break it all down, but because we're on this lesson right now, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I share all of this with you guys. So number 1, the first thing that makes up your credit score, I'm going to really go into it from order of highest percentage to lowest. So 35% of your credit score is comprised of your payment history. So based on all of the credit activity that you have on your credit report, they're looking at your frequency and your ability to repay and how you've repaid on your credits and on your debts over however long you've had them. And so if you ever look at your credit report, you're going to see these different numbers or these different colors, and it'll say like on time, or it'll say 30 days late or 60 days late or 90 days late, or any of these little numbers. You're going to see all of these different bubbles and counts. That's a representation of your payment history. So for every single credit account that you have on your credit report, it is tracking your ability to repay. And not only your ability to repay, but your ability to repay on time. So because 35% of your score comprises your repayment history or your payment history, that's a huge chunk. That's like 192.5 points is what your payment history comprises of in and of itself. For me, in my situation, because I was so adamant about not being late on things and not having things report negatively, I have all of my stuff that's paid on time. So I didn't have any negative remarks in that area. So I was able to get the maximum points in that area, which is 192.5. The next percentage is 30% of your score, which is comprised of your utilization. Your utilization is a term that is essentially allowing or is calculating the available credit that you have and how much of that you have used. So let's look at this from 2 forms. You have your utilization on your credit cards, and then you also have, and I'm not really going to call it utilization, I'm going to call it proportion rate. You have your proportion rate on any installment loans that you have. So if you're looking at your credit cards, or if you're looking at the credit card accounts that you have, if you take the credit limit and you also look at the balance, you divide the two, it's going to tell you what your utilization is. So prime example, if you have $5,000 or if you have a $10,000 credit limit, but your balance on that particular credit card is $5,000, then that means that you are at a 50% utilization at the time that your credit report, at the time that your balances end up reporting out on your credit report. And if you're at 50% utilization, that means that you are using 50% of your credit. Ideally, lenders do not like to see you utilizing any more than 30% on revolving debt, which will be your credit cards. And then there's another number that I'm going to share related to installment loans. But when it comes to your credit card, ideally, they say 30%. My book, I always say way less than that. But based on industry standards, they say no more than 30% of your available or your credit limit should be used at the point in time that your statement ends up closing for the month. So if you want to do your calculations, that's one of the things that you can look into by taking your current balance as of your last statement date and dividing that by your credit limit to see what your utilization is. And if it's greater than 30%, then you, my friend, you want to make sure that you get that lower, because now you are not able to get the maximum points in that area, which is 162.5. So when you look at or 162. So when you look at that component, that is 65% of your score, which is made up of your payment history and the utilization. Let me talk about the other side of the utilization, which is the proportion side, and that's based on any installment loans that you have. So if you take your balances on your installment loans and divide that by the original loan amount that you originally took out, that will give you your proportion rate. And a lot of times when you look at that particular item or that category specifically for loans, especially if you just took a loan out, you're going to be at the maximum in that area. You're going to be at like 90, 99, almost 100%, depending on how long you had that loan and depending on how much you're paying down on that loan. So if your proportion is greater than 60%, 70%, 80%, 90%, especially, or even at 100%, that's really going to lower your score because you're essentially maxed out at that point, even though it's an installment loan. Some of you may be in situations where you are over proportion. And what does that mean? That means the balance that you have now is greater than the original loan amount that you took out. And so when that happens, that means that there's interest that's occurring or being incurred on your balance, but the payments that you're making is not bringing it down enough. So let me talk about this example real quick when it comes to student loans. And this is one of the reasons why during the pandemic and the pause, why the Department of Education opted to take the interest rates down to zero, because what they didn't want was interest to be accruing on federal student loan holders' loans while we were under this pandemic state. So if you are someone who has student loans, I would definitely suggest that you take a look at your individual loans as well as the disbursements, so that way you can be able to see where you stand and see where you are over proportion in that area. Because if your credit score is hindered as a result of your student loans, that's the main reason why. That's the main reason why, because your balance is too high in proportion to what you originally borrowed in the first place. So take a look at that. The next piece, which is 15% of your score, and that is your length of history. When you're looking at your length of history, it's essentially how long you've had credit or how long you've had an account open. This is something that I really want you guys to pay very close attention to, because this length can change once an account is closed. So what are the ways in which an account can be closed? We're going to start with credit cards. Your credit card account can be closed either by you. If you give them a call and say you no longer want this account, you want to close it out. That's one option. Another option is if you were a guarantee or if you are authorized user on someone else's credit card and you decide to take yourself off as an authorized user. Once you take yourself off as an authorized user, it's going to come off of your credit report. So if they have had long age and you decide to take yourself off, you're going to lose that age that was associated with that account. Another example is loans. Did I say the other way? Oh, the other way that your credit card accounts can be closed is if the grantor closes them out. So the grantor, which is the bank, the lender, they can reduce your credit limit. They can do whatever they want to do when they are the lender. And if most times they will close your account due to non-activity over a certain period of time. So if you have a credit card that you haven't been using, you barely use it, it's been idle for a while, 9 times out of 10, even without them contacting you or without them saying anything, they can close the account. Sometimes the banks will give you a courtesy notice to say, hey, you haven't used this in a while. If you want to keep this open, you may want to make a charge. But if you ignore the letters, you don't look at the letters, and you just don't have any activity on it, then more than likely it's going to close due to non-usage. And if this was a card that you've had for a long time, you're going to lose the age associated with that. Another example is now on the installment loan side, and these are loans where you have like a fixed time period or you have an agreement where you're paying over however many, whatever the terms are. Once you pay that loan off, like once that balance reaches zero, then that means it's closed. Once the account's closed, that age is now gone. So this is one of the things that I was sharing when we were having conversations around student loans, is that if we go through the state and you're either forgiven, either under PSLF, under IDR, if you have any forgiveness that you end up receiving because of the one-time debt relief, if it gets approved, I'm just going to say if, because it's still blocked right now. But any forgiveness that you receive that may cause your student loans to be paid in full, if you had that loan for 20 years, if you had that loan for 25 years, you have to recognize and realize that once that gets paid in full, that's 25 years that's now gone. If you don't have another account that has already been still active, or that is still active on your account that can help you hold that age. So 15% of your score is your length of history. So the longer, the better. The more history you have, the better in terms of length. So if you have an account that you took out or that you opened up 20 years ago, your goal should be to keep that open. Your goal should be to keep that active, so that way you can be able to maintain that longer age, because the longer the age, the more points you'll be able to get in that area. The next bucket, we are now on number 4. The fourth one is your credit mix. Credit mix. So your credit mix is essentially 10% of your score. And what they're testing you for in this side of the house is your ability to maintain and to manage handling multiple types of debt. So when you're looking at your mix, you're looking at, do you have revolving debt? You're looking at, do you have installment debt? And more importantly, if you have installment debt, what kind? Is it short term? Is it long term? Do you have real estate? Do you have a car loan? Do you have student loans? Do you have personal loans? Are they secured, not secured? So they're looking at all of these different types of credit that they're wanting to see. Can you manage those different kinds? So one of the things that you're going to notice, especially when you pay off loans, you want to have a diversified mix. You want to have short term, you want to have long term, you want to have revolving, you want to have something in each of those buckets. If you can, and it's not saying that it's absolutely mandatory to have like a long-term debt. You don't have to, but as long as you at least have one installment type and one revolving type, you will essentially have a pretty good mix. So they're wanting to see how well you can manage the types of debt that are available or that has been granted to you. The last 10% is new credit. And new credit basically consists of how many times you have opened up a new account. So this new credit also plays an impact on your length of history, because even every time you open up a new account, it impacts your average age for your length of history as well. So I may be getting into too many details there, but I just kind of want to share how those two can kind of connect and how they can both have an impact, and how they will impact both segments or both components of your credit score when you take out a new account. So new credit or new accounts is 10% of your score. And that means that you have applied for credit, which is hard inquiries. And so whenever there is a hard inquiry, what that means is you're letting the banks know, or you're letting the lenders know that you need some cash. You're letting the bank know that you need their liquidity. You're letting the bank know that you need to borrow so that you can get whatever it is that you want. And what the lenders are basically saying is that you should not be asking or inquiring for debt for more than one year at a time. So here's how it works. Let's say you decide to apply for a credit card today. You apply for a credit card today, you get approved for this credit card, that has a $25,000 limit. Then you decide to now get yourself a new vehicle. So you say, okay, my car is breaking down. Let me go ahead and go see if I can get this new car, and let me go ahead and apply for this new car. So you just took out a credit card that had a hard inquiry, and now you go and you apply for a new loan vehicle, a vehicle loan, a new vehicle loan. So you now have a hard inquiry because of the credit card, and then you also have a hard inquiry because of the car loan. So you have now incurred 2 inquiries within a year. So hypothetically, they say that you should do no more than two inquiries within a 2-year period. And I always say that you should do no more than 1 within a 1-year period. Why? Because when it comes to your credit score, the inquiry counts against you for only 12 months. Even though the inquiry will still show up on your credit profile after 1 year, it will no longer have a negative impact on your score per se, but it will still show up that you apply for some form of credit. So one of the rules that I actually share inside of my ebook, you can go to sophiamelonē.com, go to the products page, and it'll take you right to where you can get the 5 Rules of Perfect Credit ebook. I actually have a 25% sale on my website. Everything on the site now is 25% off. If you go to the site, the code will be at the top. And I talk about how you want to keep it to 1 every 12 months. 1 every 12 months, even if they say you can do up to 2, because you really don't want to do 2 in a year, because you're going to now have a double impact of points, if that makes sense. You're essentially going to have your score impacted twice within that 12-month period, and it's going to take 12 months before it no longer has a count impact, but it will still show up as an inquiry on your credit profile. So these are the things that a lot of people may not necessarily know or understand when it comes to credit. And I have to tell you all that once I began to do the research, I said, I'm going to test it. Let me test it. Because if I've already gone through each of these areas, I know that I have not taken out any debt. I know that I have not applied for any debt, because I have been on this debt freedom journey for years at this point. And I knew that I was out of that time span of still having hard inquiries show up on my credit report. So I knew I would have the maximum points in that area. I knew that I would have the maximum points in my length of history somewhat. I think, I have a lot of years, but again, the longer, the better. So the more years you have, the more points you're going to be able to have in that area. But remember, I was telling you guys, every time you open up a new account, it impacts your average. But I knew I had pretty good length, so I was like, okay, that's not an issue. I have the maximum points in terms of the payment history, because I wasn't making any payments late. The only thing that was left, I knew I had a good mix, because at this point, let me just share this as well. I had a good mix because I had revolving debt, I had installment debts, I had long-term, short-term, I had all of them. But the moment that I paid off the student loans, that dropped my score. That dropped my score in 2 areas. That dropped my score in the length of history area, somewhat, not really. It dropped my score in the utilization area, for sure. And did it drop my score in another one? And it dropped my score in the mix area as well. So the mix and the utilization were really the main ones that were impacted. Why? Because at this point then I only had the mortgage and I only had the credit cards. So I only had those 2 types. And it impacted the utilization or the proportion because my mortgage was high. My mortgage balance was high in proportion to what I had originally taken out. So because I was like at 95% or 96% utilization or proportion on my mortgage, because all of my other student loans got taken away, because you got to remember, I'm aggressively paying down these loans. And so if I'm aggressively paying down these loans, that means what? My balances are dropping. And so because my balances are dropping on all of these student loans, that balance in proportion to the original loan amount was like at 20%. it was like at 30% utilization or proportion. So it was very low. So that is what was causing my score to actually go up. But because I then paid it off, those accounts closed. And so if the accounts closed, then that means I lost all the history. None of the utilizations count. None of that counts because at this point it's closed. And what I did to change the game for me to test out this research that I had just did and test out the algorithm, I took out a loan and I said, if this is supposed to be how it works, let me take out this loan, let me pay this loan down, and let me see what it does to my score. So I take out this loan and I pay it down to 50% of what I had taken out. And do you all know that my score shot? My score shot from like 740 something to 806. Just like that. Shot through the roof. Shot through the roof. And I could not believe it. I was like, oh, I just cracked the code. I just cracked the code. And when I continued to pay it down, then boom, my score was 847. So I'm telling you all that as long as you understand the algorithm, as long as you understand how your score is being evaluated, let me say it in another way, then you have the tools, you have the mechanisms, you have the ways to improve your score. It's just about you understanding how your score works and how it works in proportion to what your facts are, what's happening inside of your credit report, what's happening inside of your credit portfolio. So take it from me, a person whose credit score was in the high 600s. I couldn't, for the life of me, get over 700. And if I did, it was like 704, 706, and it would drop back down, and I just could not understand. I could not understand it. But once I went to study, and I tested everything against my own profile, and it's all about timing, and I timed it perfectly to test it so that way I can be able to teach and show you guys how it works. So I can show you guys how it works. I want to answer questions if you all have any. Hello. So glad that you are here. Hey, Q Sky, our moderators in the building. So good. Okay, Nisha says that mine dropped too, but it went back up. Yep. And this is another thing. When it comes to credit, understand that your score is cyclical. So it can change every 30 days depending on what actions you take within that window. So you understanding your dates, you understanding when things report out can help you with strategizing your timing on things. So definitely, if it drops, don't know that it can go back up. It can go back up. Thank you guys so much for the follows. I appreciate that. Hi, first time on your live. Thanks for the valuable info. It's needed. You're so welcome. Thank you. Welcome for being here. Welcome to the room. Thank you so much for dropping the link, Q Scott. I appreciate it. You can now pin a comment. Oh, I can? Moderators can do this too. Oh my goodness, this is so cool. It says that you can pin a comment. That's so cool. All right. Let's see. Elevate with Vern is here. Hi, Vern. So good to see you. She says, how are you? I'm doing well. So good to see you. I'm doing well. Okay. Thank you so much for the lollipops and the big loves and the balloons. CLW. So good to see you in the room. My credit score just went down due to having my FFEL loans consolidated into a direct loan. Yes. So if your score went down because of that, remember, because of the consolidation. The consolidation, this is another thing as well. Because your loans might have been older, if your loans were older and now it's being paid off through the consolidation, that means that length, that history has now gone. So the question is, you want to now look at your credit report to see what other accounts did you have that may have been older or around the time frame in which you took out your loans. If your student loans is the oldest age that you have, then that is one of the things that you got to take into consideration, because even if you do this consolidation, it's not going to put it back on as that date that you had when you originally had taken it out. So it's going to appear as a new loan with a new date. And so the age that you had is going to go away, unless you had some other type of account, like maybe a credit card or any other type of loan that may be more than 30 years or 20 years or something like that can help you sustain that age. But definitely that is going to play a factor in that. So it could be multiple things. And again, I'm not sure what your utilization was prior to the consolidation. But again, when that consolidation happens, you're now going to be at pretty much maximum utilization on that loan, because once the new loan opens up, which it probably did at that point, for whatever amount it was, let's say you consolidated and it was $90,000. I'm just saying $90,000. So you have a $90,000 loan with a $90,000 balance at this point. So that's 100% proportion. So it could be two things that will cause the score to go down, and that will be the age, if you lost those older ones, and then the proportion rate. Hugh Scott says her credit strategies workshop is the truth. Thank you so much. The next one will be held in February. So we're going to have our next workshop in February. You can go ahead and secure your spot for it, but the date will be announced in the coming weeks. What do you think about Credit Karma? So what I think about Credit Karma is Credit Karma gives you your Vantage score. So I want to talk about this too. So this is a great question that was asked. Credit Karma gives you your Vantage score, and Vantage is a scoring model. So you have FICO and then you have Vantage. Vantage and FICO are somewhat similar, but they have different weights in terms of kind of like how the breakouts that I was telling you about how the FICO works. Vantage has a similar, but they weight things differently. And I can't think of it off the top of my head in terms of what all the weights are, but in my credit workshop that I do the comparison, and I show you what the weighted scoring is for Vantage versus what it is for FICO. And honestly and truthfully, most lenders, most banks, most carriers, especially if you are going to borrow funds, they look at your FICO score and not necessarily your Vantage score. One of the things that you guys may have noticed, depending on who you bank with, however you monitor your credit scores, it's usually those institutions that give you your scores for free. They're starting to now use and leverage Vantage scoring instead of FICO, because FICO costs more. It costs them money to give you your scores. So don't think that FICO is giving the banks this information for free. No, they got to pay for it. So because of the cost, and to help with reducing the cost, a lot of the banks and institutions, they transition from giving you your FICO scores to your Vantage score because it's cheaper. Luckily, a lot of the banks that I still bank with, they still give you your FICO score, but I did have some that switched over to Vantage. And I was like, well, why they change? Why they change? But I had to figure it out. And I was like, okay, because of cost. But if you want to look at your Credit Karma score, you can, but just know that that's not your FICO score. So if you've ever noticed when you go to look, maybe apply for something, maybe you look at your Credit Karma score and your Credit Karma score says that you got a 750, but you go to a bank or you go put in an application and they tell you what your score is, because typically every time you do an inquiry, they're supposed to give you a letter in the mail that tells you what your credit score was for whatever credit model that they use, because there's different versions that they may use. So it just depends on what you apply for. So when you get that back, if you get that letter back, it may say, oh, your credit score is 720 or 713. And you may say, how is it 713 here? But Credit Karma said I have a 750, because it's two different scoring models. They weight it differently. They score things differently. And it also could be depending on who you actually submitted an application to, which version of the FICO that they're using to pull your score. Because please understand that there are different scores for different industries. So you have a mortgage score. They pull a different version for the mortgage score. They have a different version for the auto score. They have a different version for the credit score, for the credit card. So it just depends on what you are getting and what you are applying for, that the bank will determine which scoring version that they're going to use to pull your FICO. So you could use Credit Karma to kind of gauge, but please know that it's not your actual score. If you want your FICO, that's what I will monitor. Like, I will monitor that, because that's what the banks really go by to determine your credibility or your eligibility for them to lend to you. But until they change that, or unless they change that, from my concern, from my perspective, FICO is what you can look at. Q Scott says she just held a special debt demo session for her YouTube subscribers on Saturday. That was amazing. Yeah, we went to work, Q Scott. So Q Scott is not only our moderator here on TikTok, but she's also our moderator on the Debt Demolisher TV and our YouTube page. And we had our members only live stream this past Saturday, which was yesterday. And it was a special topic for me, because you guys know that I'm the Debt Demolisher, and I just love helping people strategize around their debts and their finances and stuff. And so I wanted to hold a special session just for the DDTV fam, for us to work on our debt demolition plans in preparation for the new year. And so that's what Q Scott is talking about. But yeah, we had some fun. We went to work, but we had some fun. My credit score is 513, and I just got a car, $25,000. I'm scheduled to pay monthly $513. Should I pay bi-weekly? This is a great question. And so if you are ever in a space where you want to reduce your debt balances faster, then absolutely you could leverage the option of doing the bi-weekly to make the extra payments. But you do want to find out how those payments are going to be applied. So just because you send in bi-weekly payments, that doesn't mean that they will apply it that way. Some banks will allow you to make your bi-weekly payment, but you have to understand that your bi-weekly payment may not be enough to cover the whole amount. So unless you're planning to pay $513 bi-weekly, then that sounds to me like you would be making a double payment each month. But if you're saying that you want to take that $513 and split it in two, so that way you'll be making 26 payments in a year, or would that be right? Yeah, 20, because it's normally bi-weekly is 26 in a year. But that will essentially end up equating to maybe one extra payment, or two, probably more than likely like one or two extra payments by the time you get to that ending of the year. I know mortgages do that same thing as well. Sometimes mortgages, they allow you to do bi-weekly, but what they'll do is, because it's not enough to cover the whole mortgage, they'll hold that payment, and then once you make the other side of the payment, then they will apply it. But to me, it doesn't seem like that's the best advantage way to go, because you're giving them the money, but it's not really being applied to your account yet. It's kind of like in a holding phase. And you can find out from your lender if that's how they do it. You always want to check with your lender as well to see how they apply it, what their terms are, and then really have them explain the process to you, so that you can see if it even makes financial sense and what that betterment will be, and to see if they offer principal only payments for you to be able to make. Because if I were in that shoe, I would take if I was trying to make bi-weekly payments, I would put whatever that bi-weekly amount is in a different account, so that way it can accrue interest or whatever, just even having it sit. And then when the other payment comes, I'll put that in there, and then when I'm ready to make a payment, you should have some form of excess, and I will see if there's some excess, apply that excess as a principal only payment towards your loan. So if you do it the way that that you just explained to me, you're doing $513, you pay $513 monthly. But if you want to take half of that and then pay every 2 weeks, then by the time you get to the end of it, you're only going to end up making like 2 additional payments by the end of the year. And then you just want to weigh how much advantageous it would be to hold that money bi-weekly, and then, or having them hold the money bi-weekly, and then you really won't see the extra payment until the end of the year. Like once you get to probably be November or December, when you'll actually be able to see it. What is the highest credit rating you can strive for? Thanks for sharing your knowledge. You're so welcome. So for the FICO, the highest score that you can get is an 850. However, the starting point for your credit score on the FICO side is 300. So if your starting point is 300, that's the absolute lowest, is 300, and the max is 850, then that means the maximum points that you can actually earn is 550. So out of that 550, which is the maximum points that you can earn between the 300 and the 850 scale, if you take the percentages that I was just explaining, 35% of 550 points, 30% of 550 points, 15% of 550 points, 10% of 550 points, 10% of 550 points. That can tell you right then and there what's the maximum amount of points that you can earn for each of those components. So that's the best way to look at it. And for Vantage, theirs is also 850, but I think their beginning is like 350, if I'm not mistaken. I need this credit score algorithm in my life. Absolutely. You can go ahead and get my ebook for sure. It is available. Hey, Miss Sophia, how are you tonight? What do you think about the app Self? So, I'm going to have to do my homework on that one because I have not heard of the app Self. Tell me a little bit about it. If Self is one of those like credit builder apps, you can let me know if that's what you're referring to. I don't have my laptop in front of me. My laptop is downstairs because I was working on some projects outside of my home office. And I was like, I got to come up here and go live. But I'll look into Self. But if you can tell me a little bit about what that is. But it sounds like it may be like credit building related, or if that's the case. So you could definitely leverage credit building tools. But I will also just encourage you guys to do your due diligence, do your research, and see how it works. And first, see if you even need it. That's one of the things that I believe I talked about this Q Scat when we had our conversation, when we had our private live stream for the DDTV fam on the YouTube channel. I was sharing how there's so many different credit builder tools that are available. They have Chime. I think Queen Divinity had mentioned another one, and I can't think of it off the top of my head right now, but she had mentioned another one, so I'm assuming that may be it too. CeedFi is what she said, CeedFi. So they have CeedFi, they have all of these different credit builder apps, and I'm not vouching for any of these, but I'm just telling you that options are available, but you want to do your due diligence to see how viable it is. You want to see if other people use it. You want to see their reviews. You want to see what are they promising. If you do want to consider using a credit builder app, whatever you do, you want to make sure that they report to all 3 credit bureaus. If they are not reporting to all 3 credit bureaus, then I don't see the advantage of you doing that. The same way for those who may want to take out secure credit cards. If you do want to take out a secure credit card because you may not be at a credit capacity where you can get an unsecured credit card, which will be, like a main Visa, MasterCard, Discover, Amex, any of those things, and you need to kind of work on building your credit through a secured card platform, you want to make sure that your secured card reports to all 3 credit bureaus, because the purpose of you getting that card is for it to help you improve your credit score by showing that you have some type of credit in the revolving area, even though it's secured on your credit profile. So if there's any vetting or any checking that you want to do related to credit builder apps or different resources and strategies that people use to help build their credit, you want to make sure that it's reporting to all 3 credit bureaus. You want to make sure that you fully understand the terms and the agreements. You also want to make sure that your utilizations, again, is going to play a huge part in that. Let me give another example. So if you have a secure credit card, let's say you want to take out a secure credit card and you say, I'm just going to take out a $500 secure credit card because that's all that I could afford to front. Because with the secure credit card, you establish the credit limit by putting down the money. So if you open up a new secure credit card, you're literally giving the bank $500, or you're giving the bank $1,000, or you're giving the bank $3,000, and they are using your money as collateral to establish this line of credit for you. So whatever amount of money you give them is what your limit will be. Many times people open up these secure cards thinking that, okay, I got a card, that's all I need, I'm going to use it, but they're not paying attention to how the utilization still plays a role in that. So if you have a $500 or $1,000 secure card that you take out and you end up using that card up to $1,000 and it reports out at $1,000, then you are at 100% utilization, which means you maxed out the card. And that's not going to be a benefit to you because that's 30% of your score. That's 30% of your score. So whenever you are utilizing like a secure credit card kind of flow or process, you still want to take the utilization into consideration. Know when the statements will close, know when your payments are due, and make sure that whatever amount gets reported out on that statement is way less than what your available credit is, even though it's the credit that you established by putting the money down, because you still have to pay it back. You still have to pay it back. So be mindful of that. Be mindful of that. Okie dokie. Thank you so much for dropping the links, Q Scott. I appreciate that. Okay, yes, it's a credit builder app. Okay, yep. So it's a credit builder app. Yep, Self is a credit builder account. They report to all 3 credit bureaus. So if they report to all 3 credit bureaus, and if you seen good reviews on them, then definitely consider it. Consider it for sure. Okay, absolutely, you did. All right. So I don't see any other questions. So I just wanted to share that with you guys so that we can have a candid conversation around credit. And to also, I want to say this too, because somebody mentioned about their score went down because of the consolidation. So yeah, that's definitely going to happen. Whenever you consolidate, it's paying off those old loans. So all of that history is going to go. All of that age is going to go. All of that is going to go. I mean, you can still see the payment history because your payment history on closed accounts will still show up. It's just that it'll drop off after however many years. I think it's 7 or 10 years. I think it's 7 or 10 years. One of them, when it drops off, where closed accounts end up dropping off your report. I think it's 10 years. Closed accounts will drop off your credit report fully after that point in time. So yeah, you guys just monitor your credit. I can tell you guys, for me, I'm not afraid to leverage my credit because that's what it's intended to be, and that's what it's intended to be for or used for. So my credit score was like an 838 the last time I checked. So yeah, it went down, of course, from the 847, which is fine because it fluctuates. I mean, I know that. And there's some things that I use my credit for this month. So I know that it's going to go down, but I know it's not going to go below 800. I know that for a fact just because of how I structure things and my timing of things. So this is why I'm sharing. When you understand how the credit algorithm works in comparison to what you have going on in your credit life, we're just going to call it your credit life, that could help you be strategic, not only in your moves, but that could also help you to not have not be shell shocked when your score changes because of a move that you made that impacted your credit. As long as you know that this move is temporary because there's something else that's going to come that's going to change that, that's going to fix that, that's going to either get this whole new debt that was just created off my credit report anyway, then you can see it as a win-win situation. So I'm not going to be startled or upset or like, when I see my new scores on the 19th. I'm not, because I already know what's going to be reported out. I've already done the calculations. I already know how I'm structuring things. And I know within the next 30 days, which is when I'm planning to shift some things around, where it'll go back up. So your credit score today is not permanent. So I just want you to know that your scores can change. And even if you have a lower credit score, someone said that they had a 513, know that you can come out of that. I had a client who was a 604. My client was a 604, had a 604 credit score, and was wanting to get into their home. They wanted to buy a home. And they came to me for credit coaching, one-on-one credit coaching. And we went through this whole sessions and of course educating and dissecting the credit report and seeing all of the scenarios, playing everything out. Came up with this huge execution plan. I said, follow this plan and don't do nothing. Don't do nothing outside of this plan. Follow this plan. So they were following the plan until one step. The one thing that I said don't do, they did. And the one thing that I told them not to do that they did cost them to get to their goal. So when they came to me, they wanted to get to a 750. They were at a 604. They wanted to get to a 750. That one thing that I told them not to do cost them the 30 points that they needed. But it still got them to a great score, got them to 720. So they went from 604 to 720 within a matter of days. 604 to 720. And they got in their home and everything at a great interest rate and everything, just because they at least got it to 720. But I said, if you would have not did what I told you not to do, then you would have been at 750. You would have been at 750. And I had another client who was at 619, went from 619 to 840 days. I ain't telling y'all no love. The whole story is on my YouTube channel. It's on my YouTube channel. From 619 to 840 days. Because he followed exactly what I told him to do. He followed exactly what I told him to do. And he got to 800. Got to 840 days. So it's possible, you guys. It's possible. It's possible. Q Scott says that I'm not just a moderator. I do the work too. Come on, Q Scott. My score has increased significantly since the workshop. Yes. Q Scott has been doing the work. She is a student of the work, and she's definitely been in the workshop. She's definitely been in the workshop for sure. Yes. If you're at 95 utilization on a credit card other than paying it off, any other way of improving it? Honestly, there's nothing else that you can do. The only thing that you can do to improve your score in that utilization area is to decrease the amount of credit that you're using. That's the only way. And I've shared it earlier when I was going through each of the different components. So if you are doing well in all of the other areas, you have long age, you have positive repayment history, meaning you're in the greens, you don't have any late payments, you don't have any 30-day, 60-day, 90-day, you don't have no negative remarks, none of that stuff that can bring your score down. You haven't been applying for any credit. Everything is clean. If that's the only thing, then it's not much that you can do, because utilization is 30% of your score. The most of your score is your payment history. So if anything, you want to keep making your payments on time. Do not be late by any means on anything that's reported to your credit report. Try to make sure that nothing gets reported negatively on your credit report. So no collections, none of that. I know sometimes people miss stuff, people may forget stuff. And what you don't want is to have anything that's going to impact that major bucket, which is a 35%, which is your payment history. And then the second largest bucket is a utilization. And that's why I'm saying that, because that accounts for 162 points. So if you're at 95% utilization on a credit card, that's extremely high. And you're not going to see a jump until you pay that down. You're not going to see a jump until you pay that down. One thing about So, she has integrity. She'll give you the legit tools, but you have to do the work. You have to do the work. Thank you so much, Q Scott, for saying that, for letting folks know. How do I become a client or get in the workshop? So the workshop is going to be held in February. So I normally do it once a quarter, but we're in the month of December now. December, I'm not facilitating any sessions other than like these live streams. So it will be in February. But if you want one-on-one, then I have options that are available for one-on-one coaching on my website. So if you go to sophiamelonē.com and you select the option for one-on-one virtual coaching session, or you can do the option for the workshop. I will say when it comes to the credit portion of it, you're going to need more than one session, especially if you're trying to do a one-on-one. So some of the things that I offer is like a bundle. So if that's something that you want where you're like, okay, I know one session is not going to be enough because there's a process of how I do it. We at least do 4 sessions. We at least do 4 sessions if you do one-on-one credit coaching because of all of the steps that we take inside of it. But yeah. And as Q Scott just said, there is a link for 25% off. So it's currently all items 25% off on the website. So are there any other questions, you guys? We're at the top of the hour. I just want to thank you, Scott, for being here tonight. Thank you for being here tonight. Just doing a little bit of credit talk. I just want to keep you guys educated because I know credit can be scary sometimes, and a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to need credit repair. I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to do that. So it's really behavior. Credit is about behavior. Credit is about timing. Credit is about being strategic. So there's many ways that I move things around, or I do a certain move in order to make sure that my credit score is where I want it to be. But that's only because now I understand the algorithm. But if you guys want to get the ebook, I highly suggest the ebook. It's one of the best sellers, I think, from out of all of the ebooks that I have. Everyone loves that credit ebook. It really walks you through it and give you some practical steps that you can begin to implement now when it comes to your behavior if you want to be able to start seeing changes in that. But then, yeah, of course, you could be on the workshop or also become a one-on-one. I would love to have you. I would love to serve you. Let me just say it like that. I would love to serve you. Okay, you guys. Well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up for tonight so I can get back to my work that I was doing downstairs. We will have our next live stream on Sunday again. So I'm narrowing it down to Sunday since there's not much talk or not much new news around the student loan stuff. So because credit is a very popular topic that a lot of you have had questions on, I want to make sure that I'm producing content here that can give you what you need as well. So February 2023 is the next Credit Improvement Strategies Workshop. You can register to get that 25% off. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. All right, everybody. You are so welcome. You are so welcome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I want to remind you that your financial prosperity awaits you, and so does your financial sanity. You already know what I'm going to tell you to do, and that's what? Get to work. All right, guys. Bye.